What's up and welcome to Kplus Gaming Corner, and in this Outriders video I'm sharing one of my strongest builds going, and that's the triple turret Flame Leper Technomancer. This version of the Flame Leper Techno is arguably better than the Blighted Rounds version I shared recently in a prior video. I'll share a link to that one in the description and comments, and while that one's still great if you like using Blighted Rounds, this one has been even more impressive when it comes to clear times and expeditions, and also getting through trials and taking out those arbiters quickly and with ease. Getting right into it and starting with the skills, we're using both turrets, Cryo Turret and Blighted Turret, and we're also going with Cold Snap. The Flame Leper set bonus states that inflicting Toxic on an enemy 3 times transforms the Toxic into Blight Fire, which is a much more powerful status effect, dealing way more damage over time. As you'll see when we get to the packs tree, we'll have no problem spreading Toxic around to everyone on the battlefield, so most enemies most of the time will be dying slowly from either the Toxic or the Blight Fire. For my main weapon, I'm using one of my favorites, which is the Sunfall submachine gun that comes standard with Firestorm, so we're also spreading the burn status around at a decent rate, and this one rolled with Mage's Rage, so we're ramping up our anomaly power with every critical shot we're able to land. I included Fortress here for that additional 25% damage increase, but this one's optional, so feel free to experiment with some other mods and let me know in the comments what works best for you. We're mixing in Moaning Winds and Radiation Splash with our secondary weapon with the usual reload mechanic. Not really necessary though, since you're doing so much damage with your turrets and Cold Snap, but it's still nice to have this handy for the tougher bosses and elites and taking them down easier. Moving on to our gear and starting with the helmet, we're using the Veil of the Flame Leper, which comes with Radical Therapy for an 8% increase in damage to enemies afflicted by Toxic, and I included Shatter here for another 16% increase in damage to enemies afflicted with the Freeze status. These came with Seismic Impulse, which isn't the worst mod to get stuck with since it's dealing a moderate amount of damage to enemies surrounding you every 8 seconds, but I would have much rathered mods like Anomaly Echo, Danger Close, or Thunder's Legacy, which is a much better version of Seismic Impulse since it does more damage and covers a wider radius, and I could also work with something like Focused Discharge here to make Blighted Turret a little more spicy, as this often does a decent amount of damage. I've been going with a purple chest since none of my Flame Leper chest pieces have been usable, but these work great since they came with Anomaly Power and Status Power, and they rolled with Icicle Storm, which is ideal for this build since it causes enemies killed while frozen by Cold Snap to explode and do some nice AoE damage, helps clear out rooms much faster, and they also came with Ice Baby, which makes your Cold Snap do some extra damage if it hits enemies that are already frozen. I always try to make room for Captain Hunter since you'll always want that extra 16% damage to bosses and elites. Definitely a nice to have. I'm using the Waistcloth of the Flame Leper, which comes standard with Virulent Compound, which in my opinion doesn't really do much noticeable damage, causing elites with Toxic on them to explode and do a small amount of damage. Its real value comes in the fact that it allows you to deal 10% more damage to elites afflicted by Toxic or Blight Fire, so this plus Captain Hunter means you're dealing 26% extra damage to most elites and bosses you're coming across. Virulent Compound also helps spread the Toxic and Blight Fire around, so that's also really helpful. These pants rolled with Improved Coolant, which doubles the fire rate of your Cryo Turret, helps it perform a little better. And then I threw on Twins, so we can now deploy 2 Cryo Turrets before triggering a cooldown. So at all times you should have 2 Cryo Turrets and 1 Blighted Turret out, why it's called Triple Turret Flame Leper. We're going with Purple Gloves with Anomaly Power, and I'm still searching for one just like this but that has Status Power on them. This is because we're using Hail Shot here, which increases the damage your Cryo Turrets are doing based on your Status Power, so you'll want Status Power on as many pieces, including your gun, as you can find. These rolled with Long Winter, which increases the range of your Cold Snap, extending its reach by 50%, which makes a big difference, and you'll be freezing many more enemies per cast than without it. And it came with Double Trouble in the APOC slot, which is also improving the effect of your Cryo Turret, since with this you're doubling the fire output with 2 barrels instead of 1 for each Cryo Turret. I'm using the Boots of the Flame Leper to activate the set bonus, and these rolled with Unstoppable Force, which is increasing your anomaly power based on how much resistance piercing we have, and the boots come standard with Toxic Piercer, which raises the effectiveness of the Toxic status, also based on your resistance piercing. Ideally though, once I get my hands on a good Flame Leper chest piece, I'll switch to Purple Boots with Anomaly Power and Unstoppable Force, so then I'd be even more powerful with Anomaly Power on all of my gear pieces. I added Euthanizer here to get some extra damage on enemies afflicted with Toxic, So this plus Radical Therapy on the helmet means I'm dealing 24% more damage to enemies with Toxic. For the class tree, it's a hybrid setup, half along the bottom, and then we're coming up to the middle and continuing until we get to the end with Overclocked, which states whenever you toss a cryo turret or hit with a cold snap, you're increasing both anomaly and weapon damage by 40% for 10 seconds. Plus, it gives you a second chance in case you lose all your health, returning 50% of your health in case it runs out, and this can happen once every 3 minutes. You'll want to grab Adrenalizing Antenna for an extra 30% anomaly power when you throw out your Blighted turret, and Exposing Frost is also really helpful since now whoever you're freezing is also becoming vulnerable, which means you're dealing more damage to them. For the patch tree, we're up top and making sure we get lethal devices, so now your Cold Snap and Cryo turret are also inflicting Toxic and also helping to proc the Blight Fire status around the field. And then we'll want Permanence, which means whenever you deal Toxic, you'll also inflict another random status effect like Bleed or Ash on enemies. And then Dissection, so now you're dealing an extra 5% damage per status effect inflicted. For the Ascension, it's pretty straightforward, as you'll want to spend those first points on Anomaly damage, Anomaly power, Status power, and Resistance piercing. Damage against elites is also ideal, and you may want to consider some extra cooldown reduction and maybe some critical chance and critical damage. That's the build, Triple Turret Flame Leper Technomancer. I would put this build up against any in the game, maybe except Pump Action Shield Beast, which I've seen do some wild things, but with this Flame Leper setup, you'll be able to carry your teammates and fly through content when solo. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or maybe some suggestions on how we could make this even better. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, do give a like and a thumbs up. It's greatly appreciated. And if you'd like to see more, make sure you're subscribed so you know whenever a new video drops. I appreciate the support I've been getting, as I'm still a small channel, but we're growing. I'll catch you in the next one. And with that, until next time, peace.